Representative Henry Hyde said in 2005 that participation in the globalized economy requires nations not only to embrace by words, but follow through with actions their international trade and treaty obligations. This is the basis upon which we rest our case. That it is absolutely essential for both us as the United States and for China to uphold international law. And based on this alone, I believe you should pass our plan. But thankfully, that's not all that we have. In this speech, I'd like to move over 3 main voting issues, looking at the problem, the plan, and the product, and show you why our plan is justified. Let's start off with the first issue of the problem. The law requires payment of these debts. We have read a piece of evidence that even on the very specific bonds, the physical pieces of paper, it's written that any successor government must pay. The negative team has continued to say that the successor government doctrine does not apply because the government has been overthrown. But they haven't been able to provide one piece of evidence. They've continued to say they have evidence, but there is no evidence. The truth is that the successor government doctrine does apply in this case. China is responsible for paying this debt. I'd like to clear up this issue of Taiwan, which is completely, absolutely irrelevant in today's round. Taiwan has nothing to do with this debt at all. According to international law, this debt is to China. Every single piece of evidence that we've read has been talking about China. 40 representatives, 20,000 Americans, all the pieces of evidence talking about this debt shows that it's actually China's debt, not the debt of Taiwan. The only evidence that the negative team has read to support this point says that Taiwan will pay all of its debts. Sure, Taiwan will pay all of their debt, but not this debt, because this debt is not their debt. The debt that we're talking about today is not of Taiwan. We also read a piece of evidence about Britain that Britain recognized that it is the People's Republic of China's debt, and China also recognized that by paying them back. There is no issue of Taiwan having to pay this debt. Last point under this is that the People's Republic of China in the current system is actually over Taiwan. So even if it was Taiwan's debt, the People's Republic of China would still have to pay because they're the main government even over Taiwan. I'd like to move over to my second main voting issue, that of the plan, that our plan is justified by precedent. I'd like to point out that the negative team dropped a lot of my responses to their responses under these points. About the example on Britain, they were the exact same box. Sure, they weren't the exact same agency. That's why we read another piece of precedent talking about how our specific agency has been successful 47 times. They've dropped this argument that this specific agency has actually worked 47 times, even with communist governments like China. We also read a piece of evidence about Iraq, that China uses this exact same international law in regards to Iraq. So China clearly recognizes this law. So what do these 3 examples prove? These 3 examples prove that China has an obligation to pay back this debt. They recognize it, we recognize it, and it is reasonable to assume that China will negotiate because of the 47 times that we've been successful in the past. But that's my third voting issue, that of the product. What will actually happen after we pass our plan? Now, the negative team has seemed to focus the entire round on what exactly will happen, whether or not we'll be able to solve. And I'd simply like to say what we've been saying this entire round, that we don't have to prove that China will accept these negotiations. That is, quite frankly, impossible to prove. It is an impossible standard. We are not going to read evidence from fortune tellers predicting whether or not China will actually do this. We don't have any prophecies from the Bible talking about this. It's really impossible for us to come up here and give you evidence that says that China will 100% pay back all our debt. But here's why we don't actually have to do that. Because we are justified by law, because we are justified by precedent, I do believe it's reasonable to assume that China actually will do this. That's why Britain, the 47 examples in the